Hi, I'm Adam Brodie. I'd like to welcome you to Panther Center.
And I'm Brian Batko, and today we're going to take you through the first month of Pitt sports.
We're going to start off with football. We're Pitt's currently 2-2 with wins against Florida International University and New Hampshire, losses against Miami and Utah.
Yeah, Adam, the 500 record, a little bit of a disappointment this year so far for the Pitt football team. Coming into this season, a lot of people had very high hopes for them. People were talking about a BCS berth, Big East championship, maybe even a national championship, but they really haven't looked up to par so far.
And what fans have to understand is the Utah game, after that, a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to be a bad year for Pitt. I didn't quite see it that way after Utah. We lost by a field goal in overtime on the road against a great team that had success at home, hadn't lost in 3 years at home. That game wasn't so bad. We come back and play New Hampshire. We beat them, but they're kind of a nobody team. The biggest story in that game, Dion Lewis didn't get off the ground too much, even against an inferior team. Of course, after the New Hampshire game, it wasn't too much to say. We'd still lost to Utah, beat New Hampshire. Big game coming up. That was the Miami game, and that's where Pitt was going to find out what their year was really going to look like. Unfortunately, Brian, why don't you tell us how that went?
Well, as most of you probably know, that Miami game did not go well at all. Just an incredibly ugly game. Spirits were dampened right from the start when the Hurricanes went right down the field on their first drive to get 7. There was the shame. It's a shame that there was such a great atmosphere in the stadium that night, but the Pitt Panthers they didn't have the talent to match up with the Hurricanes, and they just didn't play their best game at all, and they dropped it 31-3. They got pounded into the turf.
That game is going to be remembered for years to come as an example of a hyped game by Pitt being lost at home on national TV. It seems to happen to us for some reason, not really sure why. We rebounded a little bit against Florida International University. The score was a little deceiving. We won 44-17, but going into the fourth quarter, we were only up by 1 touchdown. Then Ray Graham decided to break through a little bit more. 277 yards rushing in that game, second only to Tony Dorsett, Hall of Fame running back in Pitt history. Beat Dion Lewis, beat Mark May, beat all those great Pitt running backs that we've had over the years, even Curtis Martin. Also in that game, he had over 300 all-purpose yards with a great 54-yard kick return, some receiving yards. That tied Tony Dorsett's record from 1975. A little bit of running back controversy now, maybe, between Ray Graham and Dion Lewis.
Yeah, Adam, I'm not really sure what to make of it, and neither do most people. Dion Lewis, he's obviously a good player. He's not like some bum that was the starting running back that's been overtaken by a better guy, the number 2 guy, Ray Graham. This guy rushed for 1,800 yards last year. He was the Big East Offensive Player of the Year. That kind of stuff isn't a fluke. Like, if you rush for 1,800 yards and you're named Big East Freshman of the Year, Big East Offensive Player of the Year, you're a Heisman candidate coming into your sophomore year, you obviously have a whole boatload of talent, but you just can't keep his backup, Ray Graham, off the field based on the way he's been playing thus far this year.
And Dave Wannstedt has said he recognizes that both are great players. He has said, I would love to have this kind of talent too deep at every position on the team. He's going to go with the hot hand. Dion Lewis is the starter, make no mistake. But if Dion Lewis goes out against Notre Dame and Rutgers, doesn't play too well, he might see a series or 2, then Ray Graham's going to go in. If Ray Graham plays well after that, well, it's probably going to be mostly Ray Graham for the rest of the way. Same goes for Lewis. If he goes off on the first drive of the next game, you might not see too much of Ray Graham. It's kind of, it's a good problem for Pitt fans to have at this point, to be honest. Moving on from the running back controversy, possibly a brewing quarterback controversy. Some fans are calling for Pat Bostic to start over Tino Sunseri. I don't know if you agree with that.
Well, Adam, it's kind of a tough situation. Tino Sunseri won the starting quarterback job outright in training camp before the season even started. Wannstedt's been saying all along that he was his guy. Pat Bostic's a great guy, a great leader, a student on the football field, kind of like a second coach. But there was no debate. Pat Bostic was the backup going all the way back into training camp. But obviously, Tino Sunseri's play has been underwhelming thus far. Granted, he is just a sophomore, a redshirt sophomore, but still, he doesn't have a whole lot of experience yet at the college level. So I still think you can't really jump to conclusions at this point. Might Bostic give us a better chance to win? Yeah, he might. But you also have to look towards the future. Tino Sunseri, he still has a lot of games left in this season. He might prove that he can be a pretty successful college quarterback. Time will tell, basically.
And keeping that in mind, Tino Sunseri might not be the answer for the future. There's backup in the wings waiting. His name is Mark Myers. From what I've heard, he could be even better than Tino Sunseri. So this year, if you put in Bostic, it ruins future plans. Bostic's going to graduate after this year. He won't be back. You won't know what you have in Tino. You won't know what you have in Mark Myers still. If Tino Sunseri starts playing well through the rest of the year and has a year like Bill Stoll did last year where he struggled early but came back and played very well for the Panthers, then Tino can be a quarterback for the next 2 years, and Pitt will have a lot of consistency going all the way through the 2012 season. However, if Tino struggles this year like he has and it continues, I don't see them putting in Bostic, but I also wouldn't look for Tino even next year. Some other switches that have happened. Lucas Nix has moved to right guard, replacing Greg Gaskins. Jordan Gibbs is taking his old spot. As we can see against Florida International, that worked out pretty well. Ray Graham had 277 yards. It wasn't all his effort. Offensive line had some effort there. And I guess if Brian wants to tell us about the linebacking switch.
Yeah, the linebackers have been a bit of a disappointment thus far this season. Greg Williams is a guy who's been starting at the position for a while now, and a lot of people aren't really satisfied with his play. Dan Mason was believed by a lot of people to be our best linebacker going into the year, and he had a pretty gruesome injury against Miami that fateful night, and he is out for the year. It's going to take a lot of rehabbing, and it's a shame because he was really starting to gain some momentum and turn into a pretty good player. And taking not Greg Williams, but taking the place of him has been thus far Tristan Roberts. And Tristan Roberts, he hasn't done poorly thus far, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how him and the entire linebacking core can step up throughout the rest of the season, especially going into the much more important Big East play. And also they've talked a lot about the safety Dom DeSico, moving him at linebacker in a lot of spots. So, like the quarterback situation, really, time is going to tell how that whole position shakes out. We'll see.
Yeah. One other change in the roster that might not be too obvious to many casual Pitt fans is wide receiver Devin Street has appeared to replace Cam Sadler as the third-up wide receiver in most formations. The reason for this, Cam Sadler is really talented, but he's only 5'7". Devin Street's 6'4". When you put 6'4", Devin Street, 6'5" Jonathan Baldwin, and 6'4" Mike Shanahan all in the field at the same time, it creates a lot of matchup problems that the Panthers are hoping to exploit with Tino Sunseri. That's basically it for roster changes at the moment. A few injuries have happened as well. We've had injuries to star players. Our three biggest players, really, Dion Lewis, Greg Romeus, Dan Mason. Lewis was out for one game with a shoulder injury. He should be back. Not too much to worry about as long as he starts playing well. Greg Romeus, that's a different problem. Greg Romeus is one of the best players on this team. He's a leader on the team. He's been out for the last 3 games. He's supposed to miss at least 2 to 3 more. They've definitely missed him on defense. It's obvious by the way they've played. Compounding that problem, Dan Mason, as Brian said, is out for the year, and they're trying to figure out how to shuffle around the linebackers to fix that spot. A bright thing, though, replacing Greg Romeus to Jabal Sheard, who I think has played very well.
Yeah, Romeus, he was going to be the key to the defense this year. Coming into the season, a lot of people had them really high on their NFL draft boards. How does that affect Pitt? Well, Greg Romeus had back surgery earlier in the season, which is why he's been out. And I just don't know if this team isn't having a great season. From Greg Romeus' point of view, I don't know if I want to rush back. He has a very bright future ahead of him, a professional future. The guy's going to be playing on Sundays. He might take a more cautious approach and say, you know what, I'm just not ready, whether it be the end of the Big East slate or even a bowl game. So it remains to be seen if he's even going to make it back. But the front four has played well in his absence. Jabal Sheard has picked up his slack, like you said. And Chaz Alexi, another guy on the front line, has been a beast thus far. That guy's a sack machine, a former walk-on, actually. So there's not too many problems going on with the front four, but don't get me wrong, it would be great to have Greg Romeus.
Yeah, and as for Pitt football in the future, looking ahead, by the time you guys see this show, the Notre Dame game will already have taken place. Hopefully we win. If not, we can look forward to the opening of conference play away at Syracuse, which should be a win, and home at Rutgers, which also should be a win. So hopefully we can start out Big East play 2-0.
Yeah, and there's no reason why the Panthers can't win the Big East this year. And if not win, at least be very, very competitive. Yes, the Utah loss hurts. Yes, the Miami loss hurts a lot, but you know what? As far as postseason goes, those games really mean nothing. If you win the Big East, you get a BCS Bowl. It's as simple as that. So the Panthers, they still have a whole season ahead of them.
As disappointing as the beginning of the season may have been, there's still games to look forward to against West Virginia, against Cincinnati, and a bowl game. It's certainly going to get a bowl game for Pitt. They still could qualify for the BCS. Conference play is yet to begin.
You never know.
Moving on to volleyball, Pitt volleyball is 8-11 on the season, but they've won 7 of their last 8 games, and they're 3-1 in Big East play so far.
Yeah, the women's volleyball team, their season started off a little rough. They did bring back, I think, 4 or 5 starters from last year, so they had high expectations, but they did get off to a bad start. But you know what? They're finally getting their mojo back. They're getting some momentum. They're 3-1 in conference play now. Like you said, 7 of their last 8. So that's a great streak that they're on. And hopefully they can keep it up throughout the rest of the year. So far in the Big East, they beat DePaul, Seton Hall, and Rutgers. Lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame always has a strong team, so that's really nothing to be ashamed of. Why don't you tell us about who's leading the team this year?
Well, so far this year, the leader statistically is Amy Town, who has 246 kills. She's a very good player.
She's a beast.
She's the real deal. And Amani Harper with 192 kills. Amani Harper actually won a weekly Big East Conference Award September 28th for a 3-2 victory over George Washington. She made the Big East honor roll, I believe.
Yeah, she had 19 kills and 10 blocks in that game. And then also against DePaul, she said, hey, you know what? That wasn't a fluke. She had 21 kills against DePaul, a career high for her. Amani Harper, she's an explosive athlete. She's really a key to this team if they can get sets to her and let her just pound the ball into the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse.
And this seems like it's going to be a theme for Pitt sports this year. Slow start, but rebound, and now the sky's the limit for Pitt volleyball.
Yep, that's for sure.
Other sports that are happening right now, we have Pitt women's soccer, not doing so hot. 4 wins, 8 losses, 1 tie overall, and in the Big East, they're only 1-4.
Yeah, but you know what? I think they're going to take a page from women's volleyball. They're going to get it going here soon.
Yeah, men's soccer, they're slightly better. They have a winning record, 5 wins, 4 losses, 1 tie overall. And unfortunately, we don't have any footage to show you because they play at Founders Field out by the Pittsburgh airport.
You know what, Adam? That is really unfortunate. I think they should probably build a sports complex here.
Yeah, Brian. That might actually be happening. They named after some guy, Peterson. Is that his name?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That's supposed to be opening in the spring, so look for full soccer highlights exclusively on Panther Sports Network next year. I think that does it for this month's Panther Center. Be sure to come back next week. Join me, Brian, whoever else happens to be on the show, and we'll take you through the month of October.
Yep. All right, Pitt fans, have a good one.